The first time Elena Hartley knocked on the iron gates of Blackthorn Manor, she was shaking. Not because of the cold, but because everyone in Ravenmoor whispered that no one who entered that estate after sunset ever left unchanged. Elena wasn't there for adventure. She wasn't there for curiosity. She was there because her mother was dying. The wind cut through her thin gray sweater as she clutched a small wooden box filled with homemade herbal tinctures. She had spent the entire day being turned away, pharmacies refusing her, neighbors pretending not to hear, wealthy shop owners telling her to try somewhere else. Try somewhere else. As if poverty were a choice. As if desperation were a crime. Her mother had once been the most respected healer in Ravenmoor. Gentle. Compassionate. Tireless. But illness doesn't care about goodness. Fever had drained her strength, and without proper medicine, the doctors said she wouldn't survive the winter. Elena was 22, working 2 jobs, waitress by day, cleaner by night, and still it wasn't enough. So she had come to the last place she swore she never would. Blackthorn Manor. Home of King Lucien Valerius. The Vampire King. The gate was taller than any building in town, forged from black steel shaped like twisting roses. Torches burned with blue fire on either side, though there were no guards in sight. She swallowed her fear and rang the bell. The sound echoed unnaturally, vibrating through her bones. For a long moment nothing happened. Then a voice, deep, smooth, ancient, rolled through the darkness. "State your purpose." Elena stiffened but refused to back down. "My name is Elena Hartley," she said, her voice trembling only slightly. "I've brought medicinal tinctures. I heard the king collects rare remedies." Silence. Then the iron gates slowly parted. The sound was like thunder. She stepped inside. Blackthorn Manor was not a ruin as the townspeople described. It was breathtaking. Marble pathways. Midnight roses blooming under moonlight. Silver statues of winged figures lining the courtyard. It was a kingdom frozen in time. And at the top of the grand staircase stood him. King Lucien Valerius. He was taller than any man she had ever seen. Dressed in a tailored black coat that seemed woven from shadow itself. His hair was dark as ink, falling just past his collar. His face was sharp, sculpted, regal. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Crimson. Ancient. Not cruel. Just tired. He descended the steps without sound. "You are either very brave," he said calmly, "or very desperate." Elena lifted her chin. "Both." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise. "Why come here?" he asked. "Because no one else will help me." She opened the wooden box and revealed carefully sealed glass vials filled with golden and emerald liquid. "My mother taught me to make these. They help reduce fever, strengthen the lungs. I heard you collect rare botanical remedies." Lucien's gaze didn't move to the vials. It remained on her. "You're not here to sell," he said quietly. "You're here to beg." Her cheeks flushed with humiliation. "Yes." The word came out raw. "For my mother. She needs proper medicine. I'll work. I'll clean. I'll do anything." The courtyard went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. He studied her face as though searching for something buried beneath her skin. Then he turned. "Come inside." The doors of the manor opened. She hesitated but followed. The interior was vast. Chandeliers glittered like captured stars. Velvet drapes framed towering windows. Portraits lined the walls, centuries of royalty preserved in oil and gold. And then she saw it. Her footsteps faltered. At the end of the grand hall, illuminated by silver candelabras, hung a massive portrait. A woman in a midnight blue gown. Soft brown hair cascading over her shoulders. Kind eyes. A gentle smile. Elena's breath left her body. "No." She stepped forward slowly. Her heart pounded so violently she thought she might collapse. She knew that face. She had seen it every day of her life. It was her mother. Younger. Healthier. Radiant. But unmistakably her. Elena turned sharply toward the Vampire King. Her voice cracked. "Why is my mom's photo in your mansion?" The words echoed through the hall like a breaking spell. Lucien froze. For the first time, the immortal ruler of Blackthorn Manor looked shaken. His jaw tightened. The air grew heavy. "You should not have seen that," he murmured. Elena's fear dissolved into something stronger. Anger. "You don't get to say that," she said, stepping closer. "That's my mother. Lillian Hartley. Why is she hanging in your castle like some forgotten relic?" Lucien's crimson eyes softened, not with hunger, with grief. "She was not a relic," he said quietly. "She was the light of this kingdom." Elena's heart stuttered. "What are you talking about?" Lucien walked toward the portrait slowly, as though approaching a sacred memory. 2 decades ago, he said, your mother saved my life. The world tilted. You're a vampire king, Elena whispered. You don't need saving. He looked at her then fully. You would be surprised what even immortals can lose. A flicker of vulnerability crossed his face before vanishing behind centuries of control. She healed a curse placed upon me by rival clans. A curse meant to drive me mad. She was fearless, compassionate, and she refused payment. Elena's knees felt weak. My mother never told me this. She made me swear I would never interfere in her human life. The weight of his confession hung heavy between them. Elena's voice trembled. Then why didn't you help her when she got sick? Silence. But I did not know. The simplicity of his answer was devastating. Lucien's gaze sharpened. She is ill now? Yes. The word broke. She's dying. For the first time in centuries, something ancient and powerful shifted inside the Vampire King. And everything changed. The word dying did not echo. It detonated. For centuries, King Lucien Valerius had watched kingdoms fall, wars ignite, empires crumble into dust. He had seen death in every form imaginable. But this was different. This was Lillian. The only human who had ever stood before him without fear. The only one who had looked into his crimson eyes and seen not a monster, but a man drowning in loneliness. And now she was dying. Elena stood in the center of the grand hall, fists clenched at her sides, waiting for him to speak. Waiting for him to deny it. To dismiss her. To become the cold, untouchable vampire king the world feared. Instead, his voice came low and controlled. Take me to her. Elena blinked. What? If she saved my life, Lucien said, already moving toward the doors, then I owe her mine. For a moment, hope flared inside her chest. Then doubt smothered it. You can't just walk through town, she said. People will panic. A faint, almost amused breath left him. People will not see me unless I allow it. The torches flickered. The air shifted. In the next heartbeat, the immense presence of the Vampire King seemed to dim, fold inward, like shadows slipping into a smaller shape. When he stepped forward again he looked human. Still striking. Still powerful. But his eyes were now a deep hazel instead of crimson. Elena stared. How? Glamour, he said simply. A courtesy. Courtesy. No one had ever associated that word with vampires. They left the manor together. As they walked through Ravenmoor's narrow streets, Elena noticed something strange. The usual stares she received, the judgment, the dismissive glances at her worn coat and tired eyes, were gone. People stepped aside respectfully. Not because of her. Because of him. Even hidden, his presence commanded space. And for the first time in her life, Elena felt what it was like not to shrink. They reached her building, a crumbling brick complex squeezed between two abandoned shops. Lucien's gaze swept over it. His jaw tightened. She lives here? Yes. No bitterness in her voice. Just fact. Inside, the hallway smelled of damp wood and neglect. Elena led him up 2 flights of stairs to a small apartment at the end of the corridor. She paused before opening the door. If you hurt her, I will not. The sincerity in his tone made her believe him. She unlocked the door. The room was small but clean. A single window. A worn couch. A tiny kitchen table. And in the corner, beneath a pile of blankets, lay Elena Hartley. She looked fragile. Too thin. Her breathing shallow and uneven. Lucien stopped mid-step. The centuries-old king looked undone. He approached slowly as though nearing sacred ground. Elena? Lillian's weak voice barely carried. You're back. Her eyes shifted to Lucien. And recognition flickered. Not fear. Recognition. Your Majesty, she whispered. Elena froze. You knew, she breathed. Lillian gave the faintest smile. I wondered how long it would take. Lucien knelt beside the bed, a king kneeling in a poor woman's apartment. You should have called for me, he said softly. And break my promise? Lillian replied, her voice thin but teasing. You were meant to protect your kingdom. Not babysit a stubborn healer. Emotion, raw and unguarded, flashed across his face. Elena stood in stunned silence. Her entire life, her mother had hidden this world from her. Why didn't you tell me? Elena asked. Lillian's eyes filled with apology. I wanted you to have a normal life. Lucien's expression darkened slightly at the word normal. There is nothing normal about her, he murmured. Elena crossed her arms defensively. Excuse me? He looked at her fully. You carry your mother's aura. She blinked. My what? Lilian's breathing hitched. Lucien? But he had already seen it. The faint shimmer beneath Elena's skin. The subtle hum in the air around her. Power. Dormant. Untouched. You are not entirely human, Lucien said quietly. The room went silent. Elena laughed nervously. Okay. That's not funny. I do not joke about bloodlines. Lilian closed her eyes. I was going to tell her. Tell me what? Elena demanded. Her mother's gaze met hers, full of love, regret, and something ancient. The curse I broke, Lilian whispered. It did not disappear, Elena. It transferred. The floor felt unsteady beneath her. Transferred? To who? Lucien answered. To you. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Elena shook her head. No. No, that's not possible. The curse sought the nearest compatible soul, Lucien explained carefully. A soul strong enough to contain it. Elena's voice cracked. And that's supposed to be me? Lilian reached for her hand weakly. You were always stronger than you believed. Tears burned Elena's eyes. So I'm what? Cursed? Dangerous. Lucien's gaze softened. Powerful. The word didn't comfort her. It terrified her. Can you fix it? She asked him desperately. Lucien hesitated. I can stabilize it. But it will bind you to my world. My world is already falling apart, she cried. Do whatever you have to do. Lilian's breathing grew more strained. Save her, she whispered to Lucien. Not me. Her. The Vampire King stood slowly. For the curse to stabilize, he said, she must come to Blackthorn Manor. Elena's heart pounded. You mean live there? Yes. The weight of it settled heavily. Her poor, invisible life. Or a castle filled with monsters and secrets. Lucien stepped closer. If you remain untrained, the curse will consume you. And when it does, other vampires will feel it. And? They will come. Not to help. To claim. Elena swallowed hard. And you'll protect me? The question hung between them. Lucien met her gaze steadily. With my life. For the first time she saw not a king. Not a predator. But a man bound by honor. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, Elena made the decision that would change everything. Okay, she whispered. And in that moment, the fate of the vampire kingdom shifted. The night Elena left her old life behind, it did not feel dramatic. There were no trumpets. No ceremony. Just a single suitcase. And her mother's trembling hand in hers. I'll be okay, Lilian whispered from the bed, her fever finally lowered slightly after Lucien administered a rare crimson elixir from his private reserves. You were never meant for small spaces, Elena? Elena tried to smile. I don't feel meant for castles either. From the doorway, Lucien watched silently. He had arranged for physicians, human and vampire alike, to discreetly monitor Lilian. The best care. The safest protection. A king keeping his promise. But Elena could feel it already. The invisible line she was crossing. The moment you step into a different world, and there is no stepping back. When Lucien extended his hand to her, she hesitated only a second before taking it. His skin was cool, not lifeless, just different. Like marble warmed slightly by moonlight. In the next breath, the apartment vanished. The sensation wasn't like flying. It was like folding through shadow. The air thickened, twisted, then stilled. They stood once more before Blackthorn Manor. But this time the gates were open. And waiting beyond them was something Elena did not expect. An entire court of vampires. Dozens. Men and women dressed in dark silks, velvet coats, silver armor. Pale faces. Sharp eyes glowing faintly in shades of red, amber, and gold. They were beautiful. Terrifying. Ancient. And every single one of them was staring at her. Elena's grip tightened on Lucien's hand. What is this? My counsel, he replied evenly. I didn't agree to an audience. You did not, he said quietly. I did. The crowd parted as they approached the courtyard steps. Whispers rippled like wind through dry leaves. She's human. That's her? She feels strange. Elena kept her chin up, even as her heart thundered. She had spent her whole life being looked at like she didn't matter. Tonight she was being looked at like she mattered too much. At the top of the steps stood a tall woman with silver blonde hair braided intricately down her back. Her gown shimmered like starlight. Her eyes glowed gold. Not welcoming. Assessing. Your Majesty, the woman said, bowing slightly to Lucien, but not taking her eyes off Elena. You return with a guest. Lucien's voice was calm but firm. This is Elena Hartley. A murmur spread through the court. The silver-haired woman tilted her head. The healer's daughter. So they knew. Of course they knew. Vampires did not forget. Lucien stepped forward. She carries the curse once placed upon me. Silence. The air seemed to snap. Several vampires stiffened visibly. The woman's expression darkened. That curse nearly destroyed the throne. Yes, Lucien replied evenly. Which is why she will remain under my protection. A male vampire with sharp cheekbones and cruel amusement in his eyes stepped forward. And if the curse awakens? He asked smoothly. If she cannot control it? Elena felt it then. A strange pressure beneath her skin. Like something responding to fear. Lucien's grip tightened subtly. It will not, he said. And you stake your kingdom on that? The male vampire pressed. Lucien's crimson gaze flared faintly beneath the glamour. I stake my word. The courtyard fell utterly silent. Even Elena understood the weight of that. A vampire king's word was law. The silver-haired woman stepped closer to Elena now. Up close she was breathtaking. And intimidating. I am Lady Seraphine, she said coolly. High advisor to the crown. Elena nodded politely. Hi. Several vampires exchanged confused looks at the casual tone. Seraphine studied her carefully. You do not tremble, she observed. I've been poor my whole life, Elena replied honestly. This isn't the scariest room I've walked into. A few faint, surprised expressions flickered in the crowd. Lucien's mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. Seraphine circled her slowly. You understand that if the curse consumes you, it could expose our kind to the human world. I understand, Elena said, though her stomach churned. But I didn't ask for this. The cruel-looking vampire from before smirked. No. But power rarely asks permission. The pressure beneath Elena's skin surged suddenly. Pain lanced through her chest. She gasped. Lucien turned instantly. Elena. The ground beneath her feet cracked. Just slightly. A thin line splitting the marble. Gasps erupted from the court. The air vibrated. Elena clutched her chest. I can't. Lucien stepped in front of her, shielding her from dozens of alert, predatory stares. Enough, he commanded. His voice rolled through the courtyard like thunder. The pressure eased. Elena sagged slightly and without hesitation Lucien caught her. Not like a king catching a burden. Like a man catching something precious. He lifted her effortlessly. She is overwhelmed, he said coldly to the court. You will show restraint. The cruel vampire's eyes narrowed. She is a liability. Lucien's gaze sharpened into something lethal. She is under my protection. A beat of silence. Then slowly, one by one, the vampires bowed. Not deeply. But undeniably. Not to her. To his decision. As Lucien carried her inside the manor, Elena's head rested briefly against his shoulder. You didn't have to do that, she murmured weakly. Yes, he said quietly. I did. Inside the grand hall, he set her down gently on a velvet chaise. You felt it, he said. She nodded shakily. It's like something inside me is awake. And angry. It is not anger, he corrected softly. It is instinct. She looked up at him. Am I going to hurt someone? His expression shifted. Honest. If untrained, yes. Her breath caught. But not while I stand beside you. The promise wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it felt immovable. For the first time since this began, Elena allowed herself to truly look at him. Not as a monster. Not as a king. But as the only person in this terrifying new world who had chosen her side. Outside the chamber doors, unseen by them both, the cruel vampire watched with calculating eyes. And whispered to Seraphine. If the girl survives, she will change everything. Seraphine's gaze remained distant. Yes, she replied quietly. That is precisely what worries me. Inside the manor, Elena exhaled slowly. She had entered the vampire kingdom as a desperate daughter. She had just become something far more dangerous. And far more important. Elena did not sleep. Not because the bed wasn't soft, it was softer than anything she had ever touched. Not because the room wasn't beautiful, it was larger than her entire apartment back home. She didn't sleep because she could feel it. The curse. It pulsed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. Ancient. Restless. Watching. Moonlight poured through the towering windows of her chamber, casting silver patterns across velvet walls and polished floors. Somewhere deep within Blackthorn Manor, the sound of distant footsteps echoed, silent, controlled, inhuman. She was in their world now. And they were not all pleased about it. A quiet knock came at her door. Elena? Lucien's voice. She sat up immediately. I'm awake. The door opened slowly. He entered without his crown tonight. Without the formal coat. Just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. Less king. More man. You felt it again? He said, not asking. Yes. He walked toward the window, standing beside her but not too close. Curses of that magnitude do not sleep easily. Comforting, she muttered. A faint, almost invisible smile touched his lips. Silence lingered between them, but it was different now. Not awkward. Not cold. Heavy with unspoken things. Why are they afraid of me? She asked quietly. Lucien did not hesitate. Because they remember what that curse did to me. She turned to him. What did it do? For a long moment he said nothing. Then, it stripped control. His jaw tightened slightly. It amplified rage. Twisted instincts. Made every threat feel immediate. I nearly tore apart my own counsel. Elena's stomach dropped. And my mom fixed that. Yes. And now it's in me. Yes. The honesty hurt. But she appreciated it. I don't want to hurt anyone, she whispered. You won't, he replied. You can't promise that. His eyes met hers, steady, unwavering. I can promise I will not let you face it alone. Something shifted in the air. A softness. A quiet understanding. Before she could respond, a sudden crash echoed from somewhere below. Both of them froze. Then came shouting. Lucien's expression hardened instantly. Stay here. But Elena was already on her feet. No. Another crash, closer this time. Lucien moved toward the door. Elena followed despite his warning. They descended the grand staircase into chaos. 3 members of the court stood in the center of the hall, including the sharp-cheeked vampire from before. Cashin. His eyes burned crimson now, glamour dropped. You cannot keep her here, Cashin said coldly. The clans are whispering. They believe you've lost judgment. Lucien stepped down the final stair, presence expanding like a storm. I do not answer to whispers. You answer to the stability of this kingdom, Cashin snapped. She is unstable. Elena felt heat flare in her chest. I'm standing right here, she said. Cashin's gaze flicked to her dismissively. Yes. And that is precisely the problem. Before Lucien could respond, another vampire lunged forward. Younger, nervous, afraid. You don't understand what you're carrying, he shouted at Elena. If it breaks free. It won't, she interrupted, surprising even herself. The room stilled. She stepped forward. You're afraid because you saw what happened before. I get that. But I'm not him. Cashin's eyes narrowed. No, he said quietly. You are not. The pressure beneath Elena's skin surged. The chandeliers trembled. Cracks spidered faintly along the marble floor again. Gasps filled the hall. Lucien moved instantly, stepping in front of her, but not shielding her this time. Standing beside her. Elena, he said calmly. Breathe. She focused on his voice. Not the fear in the room. Not the hostility. Just him. Look at me, he instructed softly. She did. The world narrowed to crimson eyes and steady control. Inhale. She did. The tremor slowed. Exhale. The cracks stopped spreading. Silence fell. Cashin stared, not with mockery now. With calculation. She responds to you, he observed. Yes, Lucien said simply. Cashin's gaze sharpened. And if something happens to you? The question hung like a blade. Elena felt the weight of it. Lucien did not look away from Cashin. Then you will pray she has learned enough. A tense beat passed. Finally, Cashin straightened. This is not over. It never is, Lucien replied evenly. The rebellious vampires withdrew, but not peacefully. The hall remained heavy long after they left. Elena's legs felt weak. Lucien turned to her. You should not have come down. I'm not a fragile ornament, she said quietly. His eyes softened slightly. I know. That simple acknowledgement warmed something inside her more than any fireplace could. You stood beside me, she added. I will always stand beside you. The words were steady. Intentional. Not romantic. Not yet. But meaningful. Footsteps approached, lighter this time. Lady Seraphine emerged from the corridor. They are dividing, she said calmly. Half the council believes in your judgment. The other half believes you are blinded. Lucien did not flinch. And you? Seraphine's golden eyes shifted to Elena. You did not lose control, she said thoughtfully. You anchored. Elena blinked. I what? You focused on him instead of your fear, Seraphine explained. That is not weakness. That is discipline. Cassion's faction might be loud, but not all vampires were against her. Seraphine turned to Lucien. The clans will test her. They will not touch her, Lucien replied. They may not ask permission. The warning lingered. Elena squared her shoulders. Then teach me, she said. Both ancient vampires looked at her. Teach me how to control it. Not just breathe through it. Actually control it. Lucien studied her carefully. Training her would mean awakening the curse deliberately. Risking exposure. Risking failure. But he also saw it now. The resilience. The quiet strength. The girl who had walked into a vampire king's estate not with arrogance, but for love. You begin tomorrow, he said. A flicker of determination sparked in her eyes. For the first time since arriving, she did not feel like prey. She felt like someone standing at the edge of transformation. And as the moon climbed higher over Blackthorn Manor, whispers traveled beyond its walls. To rival clans. To ambitious warlords. To creatures who had once sought to break the Vampire King. They had heard the rumor. The curse lived again. And this time, it lived inside a human girl. Training began before sunrise. Not because vampires needed the sun, but because discipline required ritual. Elena stood in the center of Blackthorn Manor's ancient courtyard, frost clinging to the marble. The sky above was still indigo, the first hint of dawn barely touching the horizon. Lucien stood opposite her. No crown. No throne. Just control. Power is not emotion, he said evenly. It responds to it. But it is not ruled by it. Elena flexed her fingers. She could already feel the low hum beneath her skin, like distant thunder waiting to break. And what if the emotion is fear? She asked. Then you master it, he replied. Simple. Not easy. He circled her slowly. When the curse was placed upon me, I fought it. I resisted it. That resistance fed it. So what am I supposed to do? She asked. Welcome it. Yes. She stared at him. That sounds like terrible advice. A faint smirk touched his mouth. Trust me. She inhaled slowly and closed her eyes. The courtyard went silent. She stopped trying to suppress the pressure inside her. Stopped pretending it wasn't there. Instead, she leaned into it. The hum grew louder. The air shifted. The fountain behind her cracked, water rippling violently. Elena's heartbeat accelerated. I can feel everything, she whispered. The stone. The air. You. Lucien's voice cut through the surge. Focus. Her hands trembled. The energy flared outward, a shockwave of invisible force that shattered the fountain completely. Marble exploded across the courtyard. Several guards stumbled back. Lucien did not move. Again, he said calmly. Elena opened her eyes. They were no longer their usual soft brown. They shimmered faintly silver. She stared at the destruction around her. I did that. Yes. I could have hurt someone. But you didn't. Because he had been there. Grounding her. Steady. She exhaled. The energy settled, not gone but contained. For the first time it didn't feel like a curse. It felt like potential. Lucien approached slowly. You are not fragile, he said quietly. You are untrained. A strange warmth bloomed in her chest at the distinction. Before she could respond, hurried footsteps echoed from the archway. Seraphine appeared, expression tight. They've breached the eastern perimeter. Lucien's entire demeanor shifted instantly. Which clan? Varcanes. The name sent a visible ripple through the nearby guards. Elena felt it too. Danger. Real danger. They would not dare attack the manor openly, Lucien said. They are not attacking the manor, Seraphine replied. Her gaze flicked to Elena. They are attacking the town. Everything inside Elena went cold. My mom. Lucien didn't hesitate. He stepped toward her. Stay here. No. Elena. They're targeting humans to draw you out, she said, piecing it together. Because of me. He didn't deny it. Her heart pounded violently. If they hurt her. They will not, Lucien said firmly. You can't promise that, she shot back, echoing her own words from days before. A tense silence stretched between them. Then we go together, he said. The words were decisive. No argument. No hesitation. Moments later, they stood at the edge of Raven Moor. Smoke curled into the sky. Screams echoed in the distance. Elena's blood ran cold. Several rogue vampires moved through the streets, not slaughtering but terrorizing. Breaking windows. Dragging people into the open. Sending a message. Lucien's glamour dropped instantly. His eyes burned crimson. His presence exploded outward like a storm breaking. The rogue vampires froze mid-motion. "Leave," Lucien commanded. Some obeyed immediately. Others hesitated. From the rooftop of a nearby building, a tall, scarred vampire stepped into view. Lord Marius of Varcanes. "You hide a weapon in your castle," Marius called down smoothly. "And expect us not to react?" Elena stepped forward despite the chaos. "I'm not a weapon." Marius laughed. "Everything powerful is a weapon, child." Before Lucien could respond, one of Marius's followers lunged toward a terrified human woman in the street. Instinct took over. Elena moved without thinking. The power surged through her, but this time she directed it. A blast of force knocked the rogue vampire across the street before he could touch the woman. He slammed into a brick wall and collapsed. Silence. Every vampire stared at her. Elena stood breathing hard, hands glowing faintly silver. "I said," she repeated, voice steady despite the fear, "I'm not a weapon." Lucien looked at her, not with alarm. With pride. Marius's expression darkened. "You see," he said to Lucien. "Uncontrolled." "She just saved a human life," Lucien replied coldly. "Unlike you." The tension crackled. For a moment, it felt like war might erupt right there in the street. Then Marius smiled thinly. "This isn't over, King." "It never is," Lucien answered. With a sharp gesture, Marius and his remaining followers vanished into shadow. The town fell quiet again. Shaken. But alive. Elena's energy slowly dimmed. Her knees buckled slightly. Lucien caught her instantly. Not as a ruler saving an asset, but as a man holding someone he almost lost. "You did well," he murmured. "I was terrified. And you acted anyway." She looked up at him, heart racing for an entirely different reason now. "I don't want to be the reason your kingdom fractures," she said softly. "You are not the reason," he replied. "You are the change." His hand lingered at her waist longer than necessary. The air between them thickened. "Lucien," she whispered. He leaned closer, not predatory. "Careful." As if asking permission without words. "You chose to stand with me," he said quietly. "Even knowing the danger." "You chose me first," she replied. The confession hung there. Raw. True. For centuries Lucien Valerius had ruled alone. Untouched. Unmoved. But this human girl, stubborn, kind, brave beyond reason, had stepped into his immortal world and refused to shrink. And somewhere between protection and partnership, something deeper had begun. His forehead rested lightly against hers. Not a kiss. Not yet. But a promise. And in the shadows beyond the town, unseen eyes watched. The rival clans were no longer whispering. They were preparing. Because Elena Hartley had just proven something dangerous. She was not a curse to be contained. She was a force to be reckoned with. And she had chosen the Vampire King. War did not arrive with trumpets. It arrived with silence. 3 nights after the attack on Raven Moor, the sky above Blackthorn Manor turned unnaturally still. No wind. No birds. Even the moon seemed dimmer, as if holding its breath. Elena stood on the highest balcony of the manor, staring into the darkness beyond the forest. She could feel them. Not with her eyes. With the curse. It pulsed steadily now, no longer chaotic, but aware. "They're coming," she said quietly. Behind her, Lucien stepped forward. Yes. No lies. No softening. Below, the vampire court gathered in the courtyard, armored, disciplined, divided no longer. Cashin stood among them, silent but present. Even he understood that rival clans threatening the throne threatened them all. Seraphine approached the balcony doors. "Varcanes has allied with 2 northern factions," she said calmly. "They believe if they eliminate her, the power dies with her." Elena exhaled slowly. "So this is my fault." Lucien stepped beside her. "No," he said firmly. "This is fear." He turned to her fully. "You owe them nothing." She met his gaze. "I owe the humans protection." His eyes softened. "And you shall have it." The first explosion hit the outer gates. Stone cracked. Shouts erupted below. The rival vampires did not sneak this time. They stormed. Marius led them, flanked by warriors cloaked in dark crimson. "You see," he called out as he entered the courtyard, "your king binds himself to a human curse. And now you will bleed for it." Chaos ignited. Steel clashed. Shadows collided. The air filled with supernatural force. Lucien moved like a storm unleashed, precise, lethal, controlled fury. No wasted motion. No loss of command. But the rival clans were many. And they were not aiming for him. They were aiming for her. Elena. Seraphine warned as two enemy vampires broke through the western archway toward the balcony. Elena didn't retreat. She stepped forward. Her fear was still there. But it no longer ruled her. The first attacker lunged. She raised her hand. Not wildly. Not blindly. The silver energy erupted, controlled this time, striking him mid-air and pinning him against a stone pillar without crushing him. The second charged from the side. She pivoted, redirecting the force downward, cracking the marble beneath his feet and trapping him in fractured stone. Gasps echoed from both sides of the battle. This wasn't chaos. This was command. Below, Marius noticed. His eyes burned with fury. "She is becoming what we feared," he snarled. "No," Lucien said coldly, appearing before him in a blur of motion. "She is becoming what you cannot control." They clashed, power against power, ancient strength shaking the courtyard. But Elena felt something else rising. Not anger. Not vengeance. Clarity. The curse inside her was no longer screaming. It was steady. Waiting. She closed her eyes briefly. She thought of her mother, healing strangers for free. Of humiliation at the diner. Of being dismissed. Of kindness in the face of cruelty. Power was not meant to dominate. It was meant to protect. Her eyes opened, glowing bright silver now. She stepped to the balcony's edge and raised both hands. "Enough," she called out. The word wasn't loud, but it carried. The air vibrated violently. Every vampire in the courtyard froze, not paralyzed but suspended in sudden stillness. Wind spiraled outward from her in controlled waves of silver light. It didn't tear flesh. It didn't destroy. It disarmed. Weapons shattered harmlessly. Aggression drained like smoke pulled from lungs. Marius staggered back as the energy wrapped around him, forcing him to his knees. Lucien stepped aside, watching her. Not interfering. Trusting. Elena descended the staircase slowly, power swirling around her like living light. She stopped before Marius. "You were willing to terrorize humans," she said evenly. "To start war. Because you were afraid." Marius tried to rise, couldn't. "You are dangerous," he hissed. "Yes," she agreed calmly. "To those who harm the innocent." The silver light intensified briefly, then softened. She released the energy in a final wave that knocked every rival vampire backward beyond the gates. Not destroyed. Expelled. A clear message. Do not return. Silence fell over Blackthorn Manor. The battle was over. Not because she was ruthless, but because she chose restraint. Slowly, the silver glow faded from her eyes. The courtyard stared. Cassian stepped forward first, then bowed. Not to Lucien. To her. One by one the court followed. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. Seraphine spoke clearly into the quiet. The curse did not consume her. She looked at Lucien. It crowned her. Elena turned toward him. Uncertain now that the adrenaline was gone. "Did I do the right thing?" Lucien approached her slowly. His armor was marked from battle. His expression unreadable. Then, he knelt. The Vampire King knelt before a human girl. "You chose mercy when you held absolute power," he said quietly. "That is what makes a ruler." Emotion tightened her throat. "I'm not a queen." "You already are," he replied. He rose and gently took her hand. Not claiming. Not possessing. Asking. "Rule beside me," he said softly. "Not because of destiny. Not because of power. But because you choose to." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You're asking a former waitress to rule a vampire kingdom. I am asking the bravest woman I know." She laughed through the tears. Then nodded. "Yes." The court erupted, not in chaos. In unity. Far away in Ravenmoor, Lillian Hartley looked out her small apartment window that same night and felt something shift in the air. Not danger. Weeks later, a new decree spread across vampire territories. Humans were not prey. They were protected under royal law. Blackthorn Manor changed. It no longer felt like a tomb. It felt alive. And Elena never forgot where she came from. She visited Ravenmoor often. Funded clinics. Protected the vulnerable. And whenever someone underestimated a quiet, kind girl trying to survive, they remembered, power does not belong to the cruel. It belongs to those who refuse to become cruel when given it. And in a kingdom once ruled by fear, a human heart changed everything.